Blessings, everyone. This is Reverend Afrin with the Four Pillar Shrine. Sorry about the lighting. There's a little bit of an issue. It's later in the evening. Sometimes the lights don't look too well. At any rate, today I'd like to talk about the Four Pillars devotional ritual, and I'd like to do a two-part video. This part will be kind of a synopsis of the ritual, and then the second video will be the actual ritual of me performing it. So, for anyone who is not familiar with the Four Pillars devotion ritual, there is a link I'm going to put on the screen. It's a link for the WordPress account, the blog that the Four Pillar Shrine runs, and it talks about how the ritual is done. It has the entire script if anyone is interested in performing it themselves. I've also posted it on the Four Pillars page on Facebook if anyone's interested in looking it up there as well. And if you do, please make sure you like the page as well. I know, a shameless promotion. At any rate, so the Four Pillars Shrine is devoted to the four principles, and I've talked about this in previous videos. The four principles are study, devotion, environmental sustainability and ecological study, as well as service. So those are the four. And so the one that's most important in terms of this video is the pillar of devotion. And that has been an idea that I've always tried to cultivate with myself, with others. And I feel, as I've said when I step on my soapbox before, that devotion is, in my opinion, deeply lacking in Wicca in general. Now, other forms of paganism, maybe not as much, because they is part and parcel of their faith, but in Wicca people get so wrapped up in ritual and magic, in that sort of thing, that they have a very difficult time with their devotional practices. So the whole purpose of me creating the shrine, originally Four Pillars was a personal shrine, and its main focus was on devotion again. And of course now we are a Witten shrine, and I hope in the future we will be more than that, proto-temple or a temple eventually. But at this point we are a Witten shrine, and our emphasis on devotion still stands. So with that being said, I'd like to talk about the ritual. Now, most Wiccan ritual is very similar, and if you're not too familiar with Wiccan ritual, this might not be very comprehensible to you at this point, but don't fear, you will eventually learn more about Wiccan ritual. There are many great books on it, and I'm eventually going to be having videos about Wiccan ritual as well. So basically, Wiccan ritual, in my opinion, can be kind of a rigid structure. There are other forms of paganism that the rituals are not as structured, are not as rigid, are not as tight, or not as exclusive. And I feel like sometimes during Wiccan ritual, it can be suffocating. And I thought, well, why don't we create a devotional ritual that's only for devotion? It's not necessarily meant as a ritual. It's not necessarily meant to be in a ritual context. It's a devoted practice. It's a meditative practice. And it's one that you can do without really any tools. You're welcome to use them if you have them. You can do it without any tools. It's a sort of a prayer. It's a sort of a prayer experience. And in Wicca we don't have that very often. We have to cast a circle, call the quarters, invoke the deities, and invoke the ancestors, perform our magic, or what have you. Now, a spontaneous ritual, spontaneous prayer is, possible. Just like any other faith, spontaneous prayer we can do. But in Wicca you don't find it as often, and I guess it's a gross generalization there. At any rate, so I created the Four Pillars devotion ritual as a way to cultivate devotion in a prayerful way, in a prayerful format that isn't structured. It is structured loosely around Wiccan ritual, but it's not so rigid that you're going through the exact steps. This is a prayer. This is a meditation. So you're not doing the invocation of the deities. You're not doing the invocation of the quarters. You're doing a prayer. You're praying to them. So again, because this is a prayer, and it's done with a prayerful attitude. And I'd like to read to you the introductory paragraph. The ritual was designed with the intention of cultivating devotion to the old gods. As paganism is a relatively unstructured form with little in the way of liturgy or scripture, it is difficult to develop a structured ritual. Many practitioners are wary of structure due in part to their previous religious associations or other upbringing, and thus turn to paganism as a way to cultivate their own sense of the divine in whichever way that they feel is most appropriate to them. This is not to be discouraged, however. This ritual is intended to lay the framework for a devotional practice which can help lead the practitioner to a deeper sense of the divine and an increased relationship with them. Many other traditions have taken great pains to establish frameworks for practice. Many Wiccan practitioners may question the history of common Wiccan rites. Many may wonder why it is that we cast the circle the way that we do and call the quarters. Some may even question the reason for doing these rites. Are they necessary? The ritual works within the prescribed structure of Wicca, which comes to us from ceremonial roots and seeks to answer some of these questions, as well as establish a relationship with these rites aside from rote repetition. If one questions the purpose and wonders why certain rites need to be performed, then the answer is, they don't. If we cannot understand the importance of what we are doing, and we cannot find reason within our hearts to do so, then we should not be doing them at all. So that's the introductory paragraph. And the importance, again, of this ritual is meant to cultivate a relationship with the divine. And for a long time in my practice, in my studies, I didn't know where these rites came from. Why are we calling the quarters? Why are we casting the circle? Why are we doing these things? And so the devotional rite has a script for you to speak when it is time, but there is a little blurb, a little snippet before each section that you're supposed to read, and it's supposed to put you into a meditative mindset and to make you think about what you're doing, why you're doing it, what the importance is. And so it's meant to be a meditative practice as well. And it's very similar to the Buddhist concept of mindfulness. We so often in Wiccan ritual practice will perform magic, will perform ritual, and we're doing it, okay, now we cast the circle, okay, now we call the quarters, okay, and we don't really go into thinking about why are we doing these things, and okay, now it's time, and you don't connect that well with the rites, in my opinion. And so this ritual is meant to put you into that frame of mind where you can think about the practice, where you can meditate on its meaning for you. And I hope that through this devotional practice, when it comes time for the person performing the devotion to do ritual, they will understand more deeply what each of these rites means to them and have a deeper connection with them. And that, in my opinion, is really important. And so this video is meant to just be a brief overview, and in the future videos we're going to talk more about how to actually perform the ritual, and I'm going to perform it and also read the blurbs, so it might take a little bit of time, but I'm hoping that I can do it. And so, of course, the ritual is set up in 5 segments based upon the Correllian order of service: air, fire, spirit, water, and earth. And it's set up in a very similar way to other forms of ritual. In air, you cleanse the ritual space, you clear and release, you cast the circle. In fire, we are not invoking the deities, we are honoring them through prayer. So because we're not invoking them at the end of the ritual, we don't have to thank them and release them. We're not performing visualizations, we're not performing invocations to bring them in. We are performing prayerful attitudes, and we're sending prayers out into all the directions. And this is a really important part of the ritual, I think, because in Wicca we have such a limited understanding of altruism, and that's something that I've really tried to develop in my practice as well. And I like how in a lot of other faiths, how they have these forms of altruism. In the Buddhist tradition specifically, they perform upaya, or skillful means, which are prayers, rituals, things like that, that help to bring merit to the practitioner. But that merit is always dedicated to other beings, that they be free from suffering. And I like that idea, and I like being able to pray and be able to perform rituals on behalf of multiple people, on behalf of the tradition, on behalf of the shrine. And so I've always taken into myself and been able to perform these sort of global, universal rituals. And I think that's very important, and that's something that's very important to our tradition as well. And if you go to the Correllian website, you can read about spiritual warriors and in that sort of work, being able to do work for peace in a global sense. So I've taken that in a way as well. So when you go to each of the quarters and you make the prayers to the quarters, you're also praying to the people in those directions, that they be free from suffering, that they be healthy, etc., etc. And then, of course, you go to honoring the deities, honoring the ancestors. And then when you get to the part of spirit, you can do extra prayers there if you'd like, or you can honor, as I have in this devotion ritual, yourself, your soul, your higher self, those things that people so often forget about, the connection and the connection to deity through your own higher self. And so the spirit portion, of the ritual is meant to help cultivate that relationship with yourself. And then, of course, the water aspect is blessing, is offering, and that sort of thing. And many other spiritual traditions have this concept of when you have an offering, it's blessed by a deity, and then when you consume it, you are receiving the blessings. That is a very similar idea with something you might find in the Eucharist. That is a very similar idea you might find in Shintoism, with this idea of offering sake. Sake becomes purified, becomes blessed. Sake becomes omiki. It is no longer sake, it is omiki. It's a sacred drink that now you partake and you're receiving the blessings of the divine. Very similar in asatru, things like that. The divine blesses it, you partake it, you become blessed. And so that is an element as well of this part of the ritual. And then finally, the element of earth. And the element of earth, I think, is probably the most controversial in this ritual, because we're so used to, in our Wiccan ritual, performing, calling the gods, invoking the gods, and then we thank them and we send them away. Because we're not invoking them, we're simply praying to them in that direction, etc., etc. We don't thank and release the deities in this form because it's a prayer, it's a meditation, it's not a ritual. So understand that. So, again, just giving you a brief overview about that, and I'm going to be doing a video here at some point where we actually perform the ritual. And again, you're welcome to go to the website and find the script for the ritual, and you're welcome to share it as well. Share it with everyone and perform the ritual when you can. Originally, I had intended for the ritual to be performed weekly or maybe monthly. I was thinking about on like a Friday, having it performed on a Friday. But whatever, at this point, the shrine doesn't have a specific rotation for this ritual. Maybe eventually, when we get more people interested in it, we'll perform a specific rotation, like other forms and other groups of the Correllian tradition, like the 11th of the month performing the crystal web, and all these other different things that are being performed. So maybe eventually we'll get into that, where we perform a daily or weekly or monthly ritual as well. But at this point, just perform it when you feel necessary, whenever you feel you need to get that connection, whenever you feel you need to come into the circle and step across the veil and connect with the deities. So hopefully you enjoyed this video, and hopefully you tune in for the second segment of this video. Signing off for now.